it over to you, and when you have your speakers come up, if you could have them introduce themselves, and then later on when we have questions, you can direct them through to me, and maybe at the end, if we've got a little time, we can have a little bit of public comment.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it's all right with you, after each one speaks, we're going to let them ask questions because some of them are going to have to leave. And so we'll do that as if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Okay. First of all, I appreciate everybody being here. This is an interim study that Kevin and I both applied for, and we don't have any particular agenda. We just want to disseminate, we want to get some information in on the most effective way to control hogs. And like I say, we don't have really an agenda. I would like to recognize the president of the American Farmers and Ranchers, Terry Dietrich. And I would also like to recognize Amanda Meeks, who is the new director of the Oklahoma Veterinary Medical Association, which gives me comfort that I have another person with me that thinks along the lines I do. And also, another thing that gives me great comfort is Dr. Justin Roach from the Department of Agriculture. Another veterinarian has chosen to come. And I'll be honest with you, I like hogs. Whenever I was in vet school and I graduated, I mean, I've raised hogs in FFA, and so I have a predilection towards them. And I've gone and talked to a couple of senior classes, and the last thing I always tell them is, don't forget hogs are animals too, so take care of them also. But with that in mind, I'm going to let Roy Lee Lindsay with the Oklahoma Pork Council come be our first presenter. And if you have any questions after he completes his spiel, then we can ask him. The reason why we changed the agenda is he's going to go to an OSU Alumni Fundraising Association meeting, and he's going to raise a bunch of money for Oklahoma State University. Go Pokes.
There you go. Great. I'm glad you know more about my calendar than I do. That's incredible. Dr. Renninger, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As you look at the issue of feral hogs, I'm here today. My name is Roy Lee Lindsay. I'm the Executive Director with the Oklahoma Pork Council. And what I want to share with you today is a little bit of the concerns that we have as commercial pork producers about how feral hogs can impact our industry. And so if you'll forgive me, I did spare you the slides and the color graphics and all that, but I want to share with you a few numbers and things that I think help illustrate what our concerns are when we talk about feral hogs. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the rules and things that have been adopted over the last 12 months or something to help us approach this problem. Oklahoma is predominantly a baby pig producing state. We rank 8th nationally in terms of total hogs and pigs. We rank 5th nationally in terms of sow herd. We have roughly 490,000 hogs in our breeding herd. We're producing something north of 8 million baby pigs a year. We finish or raise to market weight about 2.5 million hogs a year. That means we're shipping some 5.5 million baby pigs out of the state of Oklahoma every year. So if you just kind of put that in cowboy math, if you'll forgive me, it's roughly 100,000 hogs a week, or pigs a week, leaving Oklahoma. They're going to Texas or to Kansas or to Iowa or Illinois, Missouri, but they're moving out of Oklahoma, generally closer to grain, so that they can be fed out to market weight. And what that means is the ability to move hogs is paramount to our industry. Do you all remember the Visa check card commercials that were on TV where somebody would come in the cafeteria and you got all this stuff flying around behind you and everything's running like a well-oiled machine and somebody pulls out a checkbook and everything just crashes behind them? Well, our farms are built to run like that machine. We breed hogs today. She has a litter of pigs in 114 days. And we wean those pigs in 24 days and we breed her again and we start the process over again. And so if we don't move pigs regularly, we have a real problem. And when you're talking about moving 100,000 a week, roughly, the ability to stop that movement is minimal at best. And that ability only lasts about 2 or 3 days. And then we have real issues of, do we have to euthanize pigs? Do we have to abort sows? What do we have to do to control population if we can't move pigs? Now, I share that with you not to scare people. Not doom and gloom, the sky is not falling. But those are the realities of how we raise hogs today. And so when we think about things that put that in jeopardy, our ability to move hogs, the first thing that comes to mind is the health of our herd. And the number one disease today that we see, that we know we have in the United States that's a threat to us, is pseudorabies. And we know from testing done by the Department of Ag and Wildlife and the Department's Wildlife Division that 30% of the feral hogs that they kill are positive for pseudorabies. Now, we also know across the country that the last couple of cases of pseudorabies that we saw in our domestic herd came from exposure to feral hogs. One in Wisconsin, we saw some evidence of that in Arkansas, but we know that there's a reservoir of pseudorabies out there amongst the feral swine population. So we've started with the notion that, hey, we need to do something to prevent, to limit movement of these hogs, to limit spread of disease. And that's where we start, number one, almost always. So when we think about herd health, and pseudorabies is not a food safety issue, pseudorabies just impacts the productivity of the sows. She won't have pigs, she'll abort, and it's the pork industry has spent hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and the U.S. government spent millions of dollars to eradicate pseudorabies from our domestic herd. But it still exists in feral swine. And so we're trying to make sure we don't make that transition back into our domestic herd. For our commercial units, we know that we do a good job of protecting them from outside exposure. Keep them inside, we keep the doors locked. We do our part to try to keep feral hogs away from our commercial herd. For our transitional herd, or what I think the department would call transitional herd, our show pig population, lots of those are just out in somebody's backyard or out in the back pasture, where exposure to other animals, wild hogs, other animals that might carry pseudorabies, is certainly more likely. Not saying it's going to happen, but it's certainly more likely than direct exposure to a commercial herd. The challenge is if we get pseudorabies in the show pig herd, and we've moved those hogs all over the state of Oklahoma. We just had Tulsa State Fair and the Oklahoma State Fair. We send hogs back to virtually every county in the state of Oklahoma from Oklahoma City or Tulsa. How will the state vet in Iowa react to a positive outbreak of pseudorabies in Oklahoma? Will he say, yeah, we know that was just in show pigs, there's no problem, and you can still ship hogs? Or will he say, we're not taking any pigs out of Oklahoma? And if he says we're not taking any pigs out of Oklahoma, on the commercial side, we have a real challenge. And that's what I was trying to outline as we started. So as you look at what we've asked the Department of Ag to do, what Department of Wildlife has done, our basic premise has been, hey, we think you ought to be able to shoot feral hogs whenever you see them, however you see them, get rid of them. They're a nuisance, they're a menace, let's have them gone. So eradicating them, hey, great idea, we're all for it. The challenge is, and if you'll forgive me the pun here, this is a really big elephant. And you eat an elephant one bite at a time. We're not going to eliminate feral hogs immediately. I think there's somebody on your list here from the Noble Foundation, and Noble's, I think, forgive me if I'm stealing your thunder, but estimate somewhere between 600,000 and a million feral hogs in the state. Got to kill 70% of them every year just to maintain the population. If your 600,000 is your number, you're talking about you got to eliminate 420,000 of them annually just to maintain the population. That's a big jump. That's a big task. Now, so from our end, what we want to do is what steps can we take to move toward that process? And we recognize that there are folks that have invested in businesses here, high fence hunting facilities, et cetera, that are dependent on that supply of hogs for their business. And we've seen firsthand what happens when you invite a business into your state, and then you come in and you change the regulation and you make it near impossible for them to do business in the state. So we're not suggesting that that's where we ought to go, at least not at this juncture. The Department of Ag, I think, proposed some rules, and Justin, I hope you're going to talk to that in a little bit, that included things like a feral swine free zone. Areas where we don't have an abundance of hogs today, let's not move hogs into that area artificially. I know that feral hogs move on their own, and they move naturally up creeks, etc., but there's a big difference in natural spread of them through the environment and loading them on a trailer and hauling them somewhere. Those two things are very, very different in terms of how disease is spread. So the adoption of feral swine free zones, the requirement to keep records, where were these hogs trapped, where were they transported to, those things we think are very reasonable regulations as we go forward. We don't think they place an undue burden on the hog hunters. We don't think they place an undue burden on the folks that have high fence areas, and they still provide us some protection because we can track disease. Should we find a feral hog running wild in, I'll say Kingfisher County, just for example, and we can figure out that he was brought up here from a certain area in southeastern Oklahoma, we may be able to do something about, hey, was there disease in that herd? How do we take care of that specific area? If we don't know where the hogs came from at all, because there's no records, there's no nothing, then we're just guessing. And so we believe that the simple record-keeping things that the Department of Ag has asked for certainly are a big step forward. The governor requested, there was a bill that went through the legislature that the governor vetoed last year. I believe she said she had public safety concerns about hunting hogs at night. We've worked with the Wildlife Commission, and I want to praise the Secretary of Energy and Environment and the folks at Wildlife, because I think they did a wonderful job of bringing interested parties together and having an open discussion about what rules could be. Are the rules everything that we'd like? Probably not. But I kind of operate in the environment that if you put 40 people in the room to negotiate something and they all go away a little bit unhappy, you've probably done a pretty good job coming to a resolution. Those rules provide for 24-hour hunting most of the year. They require notification of your game warden, I think, during deer season. All those things are simple: text message, a phone call. We think all of that is a very positive first step. Now, I'm not going to stand here today and tell you that in 2 years or 3 that I won't come back and say these measures aren't working. But we don't know if they're going to work till we put them in place and we try them. And so I want to commend the Department of Ag, the Wildlife, because I think they are making steps. This is a genuine issue for us in the pork industry, commercial pork production. We're the second or third largest ag commodity in the state. This is the one thing that puts us at the greatest risk every day, is disease transmission out of our feral swine herd into our domestic population. We want to be considerate. We recognize the investment that others have made, but this will continue to be very high on our priority list. How do we stop this long term? And I think, as I said earlier, you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and I think we've got a couple of nice bites going right here to see where we get to. If in 2 years or 3 or 4 we're not making any headway, then maybe we got to come back and look at it again. But I think we're at least making an effort to get us down that path. With that, I'd stop and be happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Any questions? No questions? Very good. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned the movement of the show hogs and the fear that the pseudo-rabies will get in those. Are the show hogs not vaccinated for pseudo-rabies?
Some of them could be vaccinated. They're all tested. They're all tested, but most of them are tested anywhere from, Dr. Roach, you can.
Accurate vaccination of pseudo-rabies is illegal.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's illegal?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they are all tested a minimum of 30 days before they go to show. But you could do testing today and they go to a show in a month, and what happens in between, you could still have exposure and transport.
I remember a few years ago when everything was shut down because of the pseudo-rabies scare, and it was because of vaccinated hogs.
And we don't actually test 30 days before show. We test after July 1st for the fall shows, and we test after December 1st for the spring.
I think it's a minimum, yeah.
Yeah, so it could be 3 or 4 months out.
Pretty big spread.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to introduce to you former OSU student and graduate Justin Roach, and also Scott Alls with the Wildlife Services Division of the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture. They'll both have some very vital information for us.
Thank you, Dr. Reinagar and committee members, for having us. With me is Scott Halls from our USDA Wildlife Services. I'd first like to take time to address that very last question about our transitional show hogs. In Oklahoma, we have probably the highest level of surveillance for pseudorabies and brucellosis throughout the nation in our show hogs. And although we have occasionally found a herd or two, we've quickly addressed that before it was able to incur into other states or other herds. As far as commercial herds go, I believe the biosecurity is so strong within those facilities that the risk of feral swine really transmitting directly to a commercial facility is almost negligible. I believe that Scott probably has a lot more to say about what the Department of Wildlife does for our direct control of feral swine through government trapping and through aerial gunning, but I'd like to speak briefly to our transport regulations. We do allow transport of feral swine throughout the state of Oklahoma. We have about 1,000 transporters that are licensed, about 21 sporting facilities, and 7 or 8 buying stations where feral swine can be brought to, and they generally go directly to slaughter. Occasionally they're sold to other sporting facilities. I see that Matt Napper with Oklahoma Feral Swine Control Association is here, and he is far more capable of speaking to the specifics and the specific statistics of how many animals they kill in a given year, so I'll let him speak to that. But to be frank, we do believe at the Department of Agriculture that allowing transport in these sporting facilities that we can do more damage to feral swine populations in Oklahoma than we can without them. By having those regulations, we honestly, we know that lends itself to the occasional escape of a feral swine from a sporting facility or a potential intentional release of a feral hog in Oklahoma. But whenever you look at the number of feral swine that are ultimately killed through transportation and going to sporting facilities, that is on an order of a couple magnitudes larger than those occasional releases or accidental releases or intentional releases. So we believe that they are a very important part of this equation for controlling feral swine. Nonetheless, we have updated our rules, as Roy Lee suggested, and those are aimed at mitigating some of those concerns about feral swine being released or escaping. And I'll briefly go over those. One is that we're requiring better record systems for these sporting facilities. They need to maintain for us the number of feral swine they're purchasing, exactly who they came from, the license number of that person. They are required to report to us the number of hunters and the name of the hunters that come to their facilities and kill hogs and how many are killed in a month. And they submit those to us monthly now, and that's just now started. Additionally, our transporters are now required to submit to us a 24-hour transport permit, in addition to being licensed before every single movement of a live wild hog down the road. They have to get on an online system that we just developed and enter the number of hogs they captured, where they came from, where they're going to, and just a minimal number of things so that it's efficient and quick, and they can do it in the field with a smartphone. But it provides accountability to us so that whenever a law enforcement officer pulls them over in the field, that law enforcement officer can validate that this is a legitimate movement of wild hogs. Additionally, he referred to the feral swine free zone. I should have passed these out first thing. I didn't print enough, so maybe take every other person, maybe take one. The feral swine free zone, it's probably a pretty poor name. It implies that there's 0 wild hogs in those counties, but it's the best we could come up with. That area, we believe that we've got feral swine controlled, maybe eradicated in some of those counties, but definitely manageable. Those counties, off the top of my head, is Cimarron, Texas, Beaver County, Harper County, Ellis, Alfalfa, Grant, Garfield, Woods, and Woodward County. I may be missing one, but the far northwest portion of the state. And the idea being that we've invested a lot of money, we've protected that area. Additionally, that is where a vast majority of our commercial swine production is, and we want to protect them. And so if we can protect them while also having a zone where we allow zero transport of wild hogs, and also we've also made it so that in that zone that if somebody sees a wild hog, shoots a wild hog, or traps a wild hog, they need to report it to us so that our USDA Wildlife Services can get out there and focus on that effort to keep that zone free. That free zone also, the USDA Wildlife Services received a little bit of extra funding, several $100,000 from the USDA's feral swine management program, which is very supportive and have bragged on this free zone concept. And they're gonna focus their efforts along the margin of that area and hopefully slowly push it south and west and expand it into new counties. So it gives them a place to kind of get their back up against the wall and work in one direction rather than working aimlessly in the middle of the state where we're overrun. The last thing that our feral swine new rules did was it created a license for people that wanted to hunt these captive feral swine inside the sporting facilities. This was a proposal that was actually made to us by the Oklahoma Feral Swine Control Associations, them coming to the table and trying to help. And the vast majority of these people that hunt in these sporting facilities, from the records I've been provided, is upwards of 95% of them are out of state. $25, and that money is going to go for us to pay for this software for the 24-hour permit system. It's going to allow us to develop a online hotline 24-hour that people can report, complain about feral hog issues, report illegal activity. It's going to help us pay for enforcement activity in the field to get more agents out there looking for indiscretions. And then it's also, hopefully, we intend to buy these fancy new boar buster traps. That's a plug for Josh Gastkamp and his boar buster. Buy one of those for each one of the conservation districts and hopefully allow them to lend those out to some of their constituents. The last thing, the Department of Ag, and again, this is all kind of indirect. I know y'all want to talk about night hunting and things of that better, but one of the indirect things we do is we provide directories on our webpage for hunters and trappers to list themselves by county, where they can go and identify that there's someone who's willing to provide free service to hunt and trap, kill wild hogs. There's another directory for landowners who are having control problems for them to list themselves. And instead of immediately involving the government and spending tax dollars trying to eliminate these hogs, why aren't we getting people that want to do it for free and people that have a problem with hogs and connecting them? So it's kind of an online community where they can interact. And that kind of summarizes what I have to say, and I know that's more of an indirect control method through this transport regulations, but I'd be happy to field any questions before we move on to Scott. Yeah, Representative Wallace.
You mentioned there's 21 licensed sport hunting facilities. In this area of the 10 counties for the free zone, is there any licensed facility in that zone?
Zero, no. And we were aware of that. The closest one is in Dewey County, Chain Ranch. And we were very much aware of that. And if we can control wild hogs and we can include Dewey County where we've eliminated wild hogs, I think Secretary Reese has said, we'll put them out of business. But right now I feel like that feral swine free zone is, the concept is that there's two portions of the state. There's one where we got them under control, and there's two where we just don't. And as we move into those areas where we can control another portion of the state, we feel like we want to eliminate those properties and facilities where they might escape and other things happen.
Members, remember to use your mic because we're doing this on live.
Any other questions?
Yes, Representative Reiniger.
Thank you. The free zone and the area that's not a free zone, is there a large difference in the type of vegetation and the terrain of the land that might possibly keep that free zone from actually moving as fast as we would like for it to?
I highly suspect so. Scott could probably speak to that more. There's undoubtedly, but I do not. It would probably be optimistic to say that we will have this expanded throughout the entire state in the foreseeable future. But maybe if we're adding a county a couple counties every 5 years, maybe that's a conservative, fair estimate.
Whether it makes any difference now or not, but I live in Garfield County. We were pheasant hunting up there about 4 years ago, and we killed one.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, the free zone is not an appropriate name, but it's the best we could come up with, right. And it's the target, yes, and they're under control there. They're under control.
Yeah.
We could have been the only one last pig up there.
Representative Park for a question.
My favorite subject, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just got a few questions on this, and I mean, I am still 100% want to get rid of the feral hogs, but my questions, are about how that we're going to be able to do it without going after and hurting some of the ones that are really taking them out, now. But I guess my first question would be, are there any new licenses right now being given to any new sporting facilities that would be hunting, their operation for hunting feral hogs?
Sporting facilities specifically have been capped and prohibited. All the 21 we currently have are grandfathered in. The the Board of Agriculture wrote a moratorium about 1.5 years ago that limited that and grandfathered in what we currently have. We believe that we have enough in the state, combined with the gathering stations that are taking them to slaughter, to meet our needs. And in a sense, it could be argued that those facilities could be a little bit of a double-edged sword, where so long as there's a money value on hogs, that there's maybe a sense to conserve them as a resource and propagate them. And so we feel like they are an important part of the solution right now. But as that feral swine free zone approaches them, it's something that we would like to eliminate.
Representative Ruslo for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might have misunderstood you. Your opening statement, or first sentence or two, I thought you said that the transmission of pseudorabies or disease was negligible. Did you mean statewide?
No. I was referring to the feral swine, the interface between feral swine and commercial swine, those that are raised in barns that really never see the light of day. There is no interface there where feral swine and commercial swine can really interact and transmission can occur. Now, there's a third group of swine in Oklahoma, and that's our show swine or transitional swine, outdoor swine. There's definitely an interface between those two where transmission can occur. I wouldn't say that is definitely not negligible. We believe and know of cases that are documented that we've dealt with there. But what I was suggesting was that Oklahoma undebatably has the highest surveillance of pseudorabies and brucellosis in our show swine industry than any other state in the nation.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the reason that I had a light bulb go off, because I was not a swine producer growing up. I'm a cattle rancher. However, I have a daughter that ended up showing pigs. And when the first few years, I tried my best not to be a good dad, and I didn't have her in the best facility. So I had her in some pens I'd built to calve heifers in, and we lined them with the stock panels so the pigs couldn't get out through the fence that I'd built for heifers. But you could stick your nose through there. A pig could stick their nose through there. And one morning, when she went over to do her chores, there was a feral hog trying to get in. And so had he rubbed noses with the pigs inside that pen, would that have transmitted a disease?
pseudorabies possibly, unlikely on brucellosis. We've done a decent amount of outreach to our show swine industry, 4-H, FFA, to inform them if they ever see anything like that. And it's common for a sow in heat to come out the next day and find a boar in that pen. We've done a lot of education to make sure they know that they need to do some immediate testing, or rather delay testing for a couple weeks until we can get a seroconversion and see that those antibodies in the animal system if it was exposed. So there are risks, but we feel like we do our very best to inform them, and then double testing of all show swine every year. And then also we have 300 upper kind of show swine producers that participate in our validated qualified program, and those individuals test for pseudorabies and brucellosis 4 times a year, their whole herd.
One more follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to this day, it's we're still the swine are still the only species. While it becomes a little aggravating with the premise ID, we're the only ones that have a required premise ID. Or now that I'm in the show pig business, we're the only species that has a premise ID to register, and actually we can't show without it. Am I correct?
In Oklahoma, that's accurate. That show swine are the only ones we required on. They tend to carry a number of diseases that are of higher concern than some other livestock species. But on a national level, that is not an uncommon requirement for special tagging or special premise ID requirements on show swine.
Representative Vaughn for a question.
This is working okay. I think you answered this. I just want to make sure I got it. Is it in the green area, if someone wanted to be able to start a facility, they cannot do that?
That's true.
And also throughout the whole state, cannot do that?
One thing I didn't explain well was that we've got 2 different categories of licensed facilities. One is the sporting facility where hunting takes place, and we do not allow any more of those anywhere. We've grandfathered in the current 21. Then we have a second category called a handling facility, and that's just a group of a catch-all for anyone that wants to run a gathering station, buying station, a place where they just want to train their hog dogs on wild pigs. It's a catch-all, and those pens are never more than about an acre. And we have no cap on how many of those get licensed, but we're not going to allow them in the free zone.
For follow-up.
I'm up in Ponca City area where we really don't have a problem yet, but there is a problem starting. So the guys that ask me right now, what can I do? So what you're saying is that you can be able to make the pins and you can catch them, just let you guys know what's going on.
Absolutely.
Can we follow up? Can that farmer then himself or that group of guys that made those pins, can they eradicate them then right on the spot?
Yeah, really, we don't consider it any different than any other livestock species in Oklahoma. They kind of own it, and it's up to them whether they want to raise it for meat, or kill it on the spot for no good reason, or train dogs on it. That's the laws in Oklahoma on animal ownership.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Representative Park for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I want to make sure, that we do protect our commercial hog industry in this state, because they are a vital asset to our state. But yet again, I want to protect property rights. I want to protect those, with these that are doing it right and abiding by the law with these hunting facilities, because they are an asset to our state. They're contributing, even in our downed economy here in the state. And now and my question is, do you think that some of the new laws and some of the new regulations that are being put in place and have been put in place here recently by the Department of Agriculture are going to be effective to be able to start declining some of the pig population?
I do. I believe we've got such a bad problem. If you look at that map, I think we've got such a bad problem just about everywhere in the blue. Not everywhere, but it's going to be hard for us to make a real serious impact there, and that's where our transporters and facilities come in. At least trying to keep it level at best, trying to keep it under control. But then our USDA Wildlife Services, I feel their efforts and their funding is going to be really focused on the margin, the line right there between, to try to expand it down. So I do feel like these rules are going to be effective. It's going to be more effective along that margin, but Scott's maybe better at answering their role in a statewide effort of eradicating feral swine.
Follow up.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Well, do you not believe also that, I mean, we already have laws and regulations that are in place that were prior to any of these new regulations that were already there. But part of the problem is the laws that were in place were not being enforced by, whether it's local DAs and everything else, and by them not doing their job and enforcing those laws that are in place by the transport of feral hogs. And I mean, there was some that were caught, and they were not, those laws that were in place were not enforced. And by those not being enforced, now others are having to suffer the consequences of a DA not doing his job. And I will say some of the new laws and regulations that the Department of Agriculture has been putting in place. I mean, I farm and ranch for a living, and Secretary Reese needs to get out and look, and it even come down to Cotton County or whatever else, because the pig population has exploded down there. Because, I mean, we have had fields that have absolutely been destroyed within the last 6 or 8 months because of new laws and new regulations where it never has been before. And it is costing, you know, farmers and ranchers now a lot of money where it didn't cost them before, because you had these trappers being able to trap, and they were abiding by the law. It was the ones that were not abiding by the law that needed to be penalized, and those were the ones that we're after. Now we're creating a huge mess by not enforcing the laws that were in place at the beginning.
Yes, sir. That's a big question. You're referring to the McCurtain County case that we had, and you're absolutely right that was not prosecuted, and we were very disappointed by that. In regards to other enforcement issues, there's really not much the agency can do with as little funding as we have. There's no appropriations for this program. There's very little we can do unless things are reported to us. And so our previous rules were also weak in that it only required that a transporter have a transporter license, and that's all. So long as he got pulled over by a game warden on the side of the road and that person could flash a card that they were a licensed transporter, that movement was legal, and we had no way to validate whether 10 minutes later he was going to be releasing them somewhere else in the woods or taking them to some illegal facility. And so with the new rules, we strengthened them by asking for a little bit more accountability with this 24-hour system to tell us where they're going and where they came from. Is there a question I missed in there? I'm really sorry.
I mean, my question is, do you think that even the new laws and new regulations, you know, are going to be able to help whenever, I mean, it's been, you know, proven that they are not, and I'm not trying to take up and defend these high-fence facilities, because, I mean, I don't want one, but do you believe that these new laws and regulations that are being imposed by the Department of Agriculture is going to decrease the population? And then to follow up with that, the USDA dollars that you had mentioned, how many USDA dollars are coming into our state for this feral free zone or whatever else, and then who receives them, and what exactly are they being used for?
Okay. I'll let Scott respond to that. I think it was a couple $100,000 they got extra this year from the USDA for those purposes, and they were very pleased with this feral swine free zone concept. But in regards to our new rules rule is going to make a difference. I think more than anything, it's going to provide the support and backing that the USDA needs to have somewhere to start from and somewhere to focus and a direction to move rather than moving in all directions and just going where they can to kill hogs. It gives them a margin to move along and try to expand that zone. I also, more than anything, I don't know if this is, it's not really killing more hogs, but it provides a higher level of accountability where we can cut down on more of these hogs being intentionally released and escaped, and which most certainly is the biggest concern of many legislators and agricultural organizations in Oklahoma that would like to add additional prohibitions on them. I think that provides a little bit more confidence to them that we're going to try to go even further to mitigate those.
Representative Copeland for a question.
Oh, you got to hold it down? Okay. It's been 5 months since I've been up here, so I forgot how things were. Best 5 months of my life, I might have. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. Okay. My question, back to the 21 facilities that are the high fence, is ownership or the certification for those transferable, or if they go out of existence and they're gone, there's no more? I mean, if I owned one and I decide I want to get out of the business, can I transfer to someone else, or can I move my facility, or are they fixed at where they are?
We did write into the provisions of those rules that it is transferable. So I would suggest that there's a restriction on additional ones, but we've capped it at 21 where we can continue to have 21. In regards to if someone wanted to move locations, that's a questionable deal that would have to be run across the Board of Agriculture.
Representative Vaughn for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to take this one kind of step further, and this may be addressed when Director Strong talks, but I'm thinking we have a green zone here, and we have a kind of a blue zone here, which is great, but we have 6 states around us. Now, I'm just envisioning that it might be a lighter blue, but we could be a big red down here somewhere that I'm just not seeing. I'm only painting that picture because I'm concerned that we're doing the right thing. I feel like all of us here in this room is trying to focus in on what we're trying to do to eradicate this problem here in Oklahoma. But if we don't have a problem, if we don't have something going on like an area wide, then we're never going to eat the elephant because it just keeps getting bigger. Okay? So if you could help me address that, if that's already been thought of, or I'm just
I agree. The green free zone you're looking at, whenever I came up with this concept of the free zone, it was actually when I was evaluating Kansas's program, where you cannot transport a wild hog, you cannot keep a wild hog alive. You can't do anything with a wild hog unless it's on your very own private property, and if you kill it, you're supposed to report it. And that lets USDA Wildlife Services in Kansas know where we got a problem, and they've been very effective. Now, granted, they've got a different population density issue than we do, but it's been very effective. And so my concept was to basically extend their regulations into the part of our state where it can make a difference. Those rules, that won't make a difference down here. We've got to have those transporters. We've got to allow hunting. We've got to allow trapping, and we're not going to make any difference with those rules down there. And so it's extending those regulations that have been very effective in Kansas into that portion. In regards to Missouri and Arkansas, it's a good point, and I should reevaluate some of the other states' regulations and how it could impact those edges of our state. Yep.
Representative Casey, you will be recognized as for a question as soon as you introduce your pretty assistant.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Vaughn is my name.
You're out of order.
Yes, he's definitely out of order. This is my one of my granddaughters who had her tonsils taken out, so they entrusted me today to watch her, which it doesn't happen often. Her name is Addie. I'm just going to, my question, and it might fall into some of the other speakers' area, but in my area, north central Oklahoma, our issue probably is not the high fences of the hog farms. It's just that their ability to reproduce at such a rapid rate, and destroys anytime we till, whether you're putting wheat in or you're putting a new crop of alfalfa in, and one night they go through 3 to 5 acres. And so my aspect is, my thought is, if we're ever going to get ahead of this, that technology at some point will allow some form of a paste, something that you can put out, because the wildlife department and the federal trapper have been awesome about coming out and helping as much as possible, but we're not getting anywhere. I mean, we're talking about when they flew the helicopter, over 400 kills, but what it does is it moves it east or west. And so I guess my thought, is there some technology that's coming up that does more than sending them off to a farm to be shot, or killing him, or trapping him, or using a net or something of that nature?
Yes, sir, and that's more of a question from our wildlife services expert. But the USDA and FDA are getting really close to approving the use of sodium nitrite, a toxicant. It's really just a question of the delivery method, so that non-target species such as raccoons and possums aren't getting into it and dying. But I was just at the United States Animal Health Association yesterday and for days before then, and I listened to some of the experts speak directly on that, and they hope that in another year to year and a half that'll be something that's approved by the FDA. The delivery method, which is some sort of a bait system, it will be ready too. Our USDA Wildlife Services was actually part of the project to build and research and practice with that delivery system, something where only a hog can use their snout to lift up the bait hood, and other species can't get to that bait. But they believe that that's going to be very close. It won't be something that's available to private citizens. It'll be something that only they can use, but we believe that it could be a game changer, or it could just be another tool in the box.
Okay, we're going to have one more question. Representative Park, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the guys that transport these, I mean, can they get like a transport voucher or license? I mean, where they could transport them 24 hours a day to report? I mean, as long as they're not transporting in these feral free zones, correct?
Yeah, the transporter license, it used to be free of charge, and the license was good for 5 years. With these new rule changes and the need for funding in the agency, we changed that so that it's only good for 1 year. It's got to be renewed annually for $25. But that gives them the right to transport 24 hours a day, so long as they also fill out this 24-hour permit. It can be done online, 24 hours a day, and it doesn't sit on my desk waiting for me to review it and approve it. It's immediate approval if they put in these pieces of criteria of where they're coming from, how many, and where they're going to. So yes, they can do that 24 hours a day.
Okay, let's move on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll be quick. My name is Scott Alls. I'm the Assistant State Director for USDA's Wildlife Services here in the state. Many of you probably know Kevin Grant. I'm his new assistant. I've got 10 years of chasing pigs in Alabama and 10 years in Mississippi, so I've come over to Oklahoma, and y'all got the same problem everybody else does. Seems like when you kill one, about a half a dozen come to the funeral. So, but we've got about 20 guys in the state who are really dedicating a lot of time. About 20, I'd say 20, maybe 25, are really dedicating a lot of time to feral pigs. Historically, our program here was coyotes and beavers, and in the last 10 to 15 years, man, pigs are taking over. It's more of our calls are about pigs. But as of yesterday, we're to about 8,200 removed this year out of those 20 guys. They've done really well. I've seen some stuff that's really bad. We were in a 40-acre cornfield last week in the southwest part of the state that we removed 130 with a helicopter out of 40 acres. It was, I don't know what he's going to cut because it's full of pigs, and we killed 80 out of there a month before. So it's just this huge problem. It just keeps rolling and rolling. But what we try to do is we approach pigs with a toolbox approach. Most of us, when we reach in a toolbox, we're trying to grab a crescent wrench, and to us, that's the corral trap. That's the main thing. You can really, Pigs, you know, we trap pigs out during the Depression. It's not impossible. It can happen again. God knows we don't want to go through another Depression, but if that's what it takes. But if you'll leave pigs alone and not shoot them all the time and dog them and harass them and just feed and trap, you can really wear them out like that, because once they get used to you and dependent on you, then you can do what you want to with them. But then also, you know, there's other things. The helicopter's in the toolbox. Night shooting, when you're going to have a certain number of pigs you can't catch. They know better. And we night shoot those or dog those. You can use dogs on those. So we look at it as a toolbox approach. And then we also like to work with landowners and try to show them how to build traps, and so they can do it themselves. Because, like I said, we're spread thin. In this Oklahoma free zone, USDA has given us a couple $100,000 to work up there and try to keep that free, and that's going to include one person, and with salary and benefits, you're looking at nearly half of that's going to be a person. But also Colorado and Kansas have been funded to do the same thing in that area. As a matter of fact, Kansas is trying to make the whole border feral swine free with Oklahoma, so they're helping us a lot. They're paying for a lot of helicopter hours over here in the Northeast, and that's the other thing about helicopters. If you leave it sitting in the hangar and don't fly it, it costs you about $150,000 a year. They're ungodly expensive, but so when you use it, it adds up. I think we're averaging about $200,000 a year in expenses just on the helicopter and pilot. But in the right conditions, meaning weather, mechanics, terrain, habitat, it's the most effective tool I got. I can use it, and I can treat an area for about $1 an acre with a helicopter. But you got to be in the right terrain. It's really effective. You know, we've done some stuff in Mississippi and Louisiana where it looks like we're taking out about all these camera surveys we've done pre and post helicopter treatment, and we can get up to about 90% of the population in the right terrain. But the chance of getting all that to work together, there's not a lot of areas that it all works out. Also, we received some funding from USDA for the whole state for pig stuff. It's going to come out to about $200,000, and we just use that on supplies and equipment. You know, right now we're buying about $25,000 in corn a year for these trappers to trap, and then probably $5,000 to $10,000 in ammo. It really adds up, but that's just a brief overview of what we do. Any questions?
Representative Casey for a question.
Versus your cost, I'm sure that you guys, I know when they came out to my place, they asked, you know, what the cost was. What's the data ratio is versus from the agricultural standpoint, what it's costing the state versus what it's costing to try to kill them?
What do you mean?
What I'm saying is I know there's some data that's got to be available that shows, like that 40 acres of corn, that guy didn't get a dime for that, and I'm sure it wasn't insured. So it's going to have an effect on our economy as they destroy our crops.
Yes.
And so my question is data-wise, ratio-wise, the cost of getting rid of them versus the cost of letting them destroy our crops.
It's definitely cost-effective. If we just let them go and do what they want to do, you're going to put people out of business. They're not going to be able to farm. So, you know, right now in the state, we're only spending maybe $300,000 a year on feral swine. And, you know, if you just made a dollars and cents thing out of it, we killed 8,000. But the thing is, you got to realize is what the old saying is that the last 10% of the population is going to use up 90% of your budget. Because it just gets harder. I mean, they're like a spring. The harder you push that spring, the more it pushes back. So, but we've been effective in places, and that's what it's going to take, is just hitting an area at a time and really working on it, and then being able to, then it turns into maintenance there. Then you can put all your effort somewhere else. But right now, I look at this thing like it's a puzzle. You know, at least when I put a puzzle together, I like to get all my edge pieces first and then work your way in. And that's what we're trying to do, you know, is you can sit there all day, look at puzzle pieces, and it don't mean nothing if you can't hook them up, so.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Anybody that's in here, if you're getting kind of hot and you need something to drink, we've got some water up here. I just thought I'd let you know. This is not some kind of conspiracy, but our next speaker is a graduate from Oklahoma State University. His name is J.D. Strong, and he is our new wildlife director. J.D. And also he has another gentleman, Jeff Pennington, that is also going to speak to us too. So we're going to get a double whammy again.
Thank you, sir. And go Pokes.
That's right.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you. Out of the Sardis Lake controversy and into the feral hogs, here I am. Thank you for the invitation. It's a good thing this guy still likes me, having Sardis Lake right in his backyard. Day 3 on the job, I certainly know very little about this issue. I'm trying to get up to speed and have been drinking from the fire hose on a lot of issues the last couple of days. But I've got Jeff Pennington here with the Department of Wildlife, who's been at work on this issue for a number of years from a wildlife management, ecological perspective, serves on a number of work groups nationally with our other states, sister states that are working on this issue, and have Nels Rottefeld here as well, who's been busy at work on rules, regulations, and that sort of thing, if there are any questions about that. But we understand the goal of this interim study is to look at eradication and control, and so we'll focus there. I have learned a couple of things in the few days that I've been on board. One, a couple of weeks ago, I and some of the commissioners and Jeff and some of the other staff flew down to Kerrville, Texas, to look at the Kerr Wildlife Management Area in South Texas, where they're doing definitely the most significant research on this subject in the state of Texas, and probably some of the most significant research on this subject nationally, including efforts to develop and try to get licensed poison baits, and including paste. We saw pellets, paste, all kinds of different things that they're experimenting with sodium nitrite to try to encapsulate it so that the hogs that are very sensitive to sodium smell and taste aren't repelled by it, but also at the same time different delivery mechanisms to be able to ensure that you target that poisonous bait right at the hog population and not raccoons and bears. Another thing you got to worry about, being able to be attracted to that bait and be able to get into just about any kind of bait delivery mechanism that you can think of. And so some very interesting research going on down there, and ones that are working with government officials, EPA and others, to try to get something in the queue in the next couple of years, hopefully, that maybe the government will license and we can put out on the landscape. So the big thing that I heard while we were there is you're never going to shoot your way out of this problem. You're just not. It's like trying to control or eradicate eastern red cedar one axe at a time. It's not going to happen. So it's going to take an all-the-above approach. It's going to take shooting, it's going to take baiting, it's going to take trapping, definitely one of the most effective mechanisms that we know of. And we also learned, and we have learned, I've learned from looking around at some of the other states, that it is kind of like a cancer. You've got different stages, and if you can catch it early, then you can control it by things like outlawing hunting and transportation and those sorts of things, like they're doing in Kansas and like we are trying to do, Department of Ag's trying to do in the northwest part of the state. But when you're at stage 4, like you are in a lot of southern Oklahoma, it's going to take everything you can throw at it to try to control it, and eradication may be a very far off and lofty goal to reach. So if I haven't totally stolen his thunder, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff here, who's the expert on all of this, and we'll be happy to stand for any questions you may have after that.
Got a disappointing message for the OU fans. You got another OSU Cowboy up here, so you're going. We got you outnumbered today. It's an honor to be able to come here and speak to you today about feral hogs. This is a problem that's going on nationwide. It's going all around the globe. And they might have been able to do it back in the Depression when everybody was hungry, but eradication is not a realistic goal. You know, unless there's some marvelous technological breakthrough, who knows, decades from now. But the toxicants, they're not going to be the silver bullet that we're all looking for. You know, it'll be something else that we can use. The problem in most areas, if you look at areas where you've got new infestations of pigs, in reality, you're going to have a worse problem in 10 years than you have now. That's That's reality. There's not enough resources to effectively control hogs, and we'll go into some of that in a minute. But the things that they're here to say, at those professional meetings that I go to, there's a lot of people present at these professional meetings. You'll have your government agency types that are the hog experts. You'll have your wildlife services guys. You'll have your university professors. You'll have your private entity, your Rod Pinkston from Jaeger Pro, who's all over YouTube showing how he can effectively trap them and shoot them at night. Everybody's present. There's no controversy about what the most effective control mechanisms are at these gatherings of people that are involved with hogs, and that's aerial gunning with your helicopter, has been mentioned, and trapping. That's your effective control mechanisms. Everything else is fun. You know, if it's shooting it with a bullet, you're going to have you might slow the growth of a hog population a little bit, but you're not going to have effective control with hunting, any type of hunting. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's hunting them during deer season, if it's hunting them after deer season, if it's hunting with dogs, what's going to be effective is trapping, especially these new high-tech traps. The problem with the high-tech traps, honestly, is Oklahomans can't afford them. You know, one of those, your average Oklahoman, now if he's losing all of his whole corn crop, he might not be afford not to buy one. But for the average Oklahoman that's having problems in pastures, and they're cost prohibitive. But the old school traps are effective at catching hogs at a number that you can reduce their densities. You can reduce. The problem on the landscape is that you've got people doing effective trapping methods or the aerial gunning of wildlife services. If you've got a county here, you've got a pocket. This guy's doing effective trapping in March. This guy's doing effective trapping in July. And you've got these little pockets where you have effective control. But the majority of the county is being done, the only type of control that's being done is through hunting. And that's not effective. And those holes that these people create with their efforts are soon filled back in from hogs in the areas where they were not controlled. So not having a coordinated effort and not having enough quality effective measures on the ground, it's a revolving problem. You could go through that same scenario year after year after year. If your pockets of effective control, those pockets will fill back in. You know, it's like taking a 5-gallon bucket of water out of a swimming pool. There's a hole there for a second. You know, that's exaggerating, but that's kind of what you're dealing with. One individual landowner that has 160 acres in Creek County might make a hole, but that hole's not going to be there long. And you've got different objectives out on the landscape. While most people realize that they're destructive, you've got a lot of people out there that want to have hogs. And what do? Do you force those people into, you're going to do this? You know, you can't really do that. And then, so you have an issue there. In the wildlife department, we have a challenge in that a lot of our constituents, what do they see on the hunting shows? What do they see in the hunting magazines? They see people that are glamorized going out and hog hunting. So to them, they want to have some of our constituents would like to have hogs on their place that don't have them now, because that's going to give them some more hunting opportunity. We need to do a better job in the department of educating that for wildlife purposes, there's a lot of implications of having hogs out on the landscape for wildlife. 3 main reasons. There's a disease vector. A lot of times you'll hear people say, well, there's no proof that they did this, or no proof that this disease gets spread to wildlife. Part of the problem is diseases are poorly understood in wild animal populations. You know, a deer gets sick, he's not going to come to us at the wildlife department and say, hey, I've got brucellosis here, could you do something for me? You know, so we test very few animals. We've just started a herd health study here a few years ago. We've tested 168 animals, and we've had one of them that had a case of brucellosis, which was a big deal. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of these things that could be spread as a disease vector through hogs, poorly understood on population dynamics of these diseases and exactly what impacts hogs are having to wildlife. We know it's not good. from a disease standpoint, from a food consumption standpoint, hogs are going to eat 4% of their body weight in food per day. You have a sounder. A sounder is a group of pigs. Sounder, if cumulatively they weigh 1,000 pounds, that's 40 pounds of food a day. That's 15,000 pounds of food a year that's coming off the landscape somewhere, whether that's food for wildlife or whether that's food for livestock. It's a lot of food. You know, these things are eating a lot of things that otherwise could be our deer and turkeys could be eating. Last thing, they're not effective predators, but if animals cannot get out of hogs' way, hogs will eat them, no matter really what they are. If it's a deer fawn, if it's a turkey nest, is it a quail nest, meadowlark nest, reptiles and amphibians, or there's been studies that show that they can be decimated by the hogs directly consuming them. Like I said, they're not going to chase an adult deer down, but if for some reason they get down and they can't move, they will get consumed by the pigs. For all those reasons, the wildlife, we don't want to have any pigs in the state, even though some of our constituents would feel a little different on that. So we need to educate our folks that 100% hogs are bad, and also we need to educate Oklahomans have a misconception as to what are effective control measures. People need to know that the boar buster trap that the Noble Foundation, hey, that's an effective control measure. That helicopter that's going around and it's creating a lot of noise, but you know what? That's an effective control measure, where the other things they're fun. I like to do them. I like to try to put holes in pigs. It's fun, and I get that, but it's not effective control. All forms of it. You know, like I said, no matter what you're talking about, you might, in the best case scenario, you may slow the growth rate of pigs with individual hunting, but trapping and aerial gunning is where you're going to make some headway. Getting more of that on the landscape will be the key to providing relief to landowners as I see it. So that's, like Forrest Gump said, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
One thing for Roy Lee Lindsay, if you don't mind, when he said we don't like any hogs in our state, he meant feral hogs, not all pigs. Okay.
Representative Casey for a question.
Still not on, is it? Okay. I guess my aspect of being somebody that's like an alfalfa producer, it's not worth even for me to put my crop in because they tear it up and then it's so rough. And so what I'm hoping is at some point in time when technology gets there that, because I understand the raccoon and the possum and the deer thing, but even if you're working with the wildlife department, I have no problem sitting out there the entire night and then picking the poison back up come morning or whatever. I'm just hoping there's an aspect there, because even when they come out with their night vision, they don't get all of them. And so I'm hoping maybe that may be a possibility at some point, because I know you can't just leave it out there. So if that is an opportunity, hopefully even if we have to go through you all to get that prescription and set up and be trained or whatever, do you see that as a viable option?
I see that the hurdle long term on the toxicant is going to be the feds. It's not going to be anybody at the state level that's going to be in your way. You know, so when the feds approve it, we may have some little bitty guidelines, or Department of Ag might, speaking for them, but the hurdle is the EPA and the federal government.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Being able to get it licensed by EPA through FIFRA, which Department of Ag regulates, you've got to be able to demonstrate that you're able to target it. And so it's not any of us that you got to worry about. It's that. But they do have some promising. We did see some promising delivery mechanisms. They even there's a guy out of Louisiana that's invented a delivery mechanism that goes by sound. Now that was the first generation, and now it's being converted to a site-based delivery system. But it raises these little doors so they can come eat the feed based on, initially it was the sound. It could hear the sound of the hog, the computer that was on board, and now it's visually it can tell whether it's a bear, a hog, a raccoon, and lift the doors on the so pretty amazing stuff. Again, the average Oklahoman might not be able to afford something like that once that thing does get approved by the EPA. But
for follow-up,
if it's possible, whether it be the Department of Ag or you guys, if you go back and if you have any data that supports how much of our agricultural has been destroyed due to that number, I would be interested in knowing what that number is.
I agree. That'd be valuable data to have.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Josh Gaskamp with the Robert Noble Foundation.
Thank you. Again, my name is Josh Gaskamp. I'm a wildlife and range consultant with the Noble Foundation. I am the person that invented the feral hog trap, the suspended feral hog trap, the boar buster. I like to tell people I did not go to OSU. I went to Texas A&M University, and I like to tell people that when I moved to Oklahoma, I lowered the IQ of both states. And so I'm going to talk to you about 3 issues I see when it comes to controlling feral swine in this state. I am very active in nationwide feral hog research with my friends that I've met at International Wild Pig Conference. To speak to that, we will be having the International Pig Conference in Oklahoma City in 2018. Noble Foundation has graciously decided to co-host that meeting. But I'll talk to you. I am going to get into talking about control techniques here in the end. But I wanted to bring up a couple other points that I kind of jotted down as others were speaking today. The first one is this is not an uncommon problem. This isn't something that's just happening in Oklahoma, just to us here in the South. There are pigs across the entire United States. There's pigs in Canada. There's pigs in other countries that are causing just the same problems they're causing here in the U.S. There's some statistics out there in a very old publication that, in the United States, pigs have caused $1.5 billion in agricultural damages. That was done back in 2000, and now pigs are getting into corn and into corn country, and obviously price of grain has gone way up, and so obviously that number's pretty outdated, and it's probably a lot more than that today. When attending these international pig conferences, I listen to and have dinner with various wildlife services personnel, wildlife departments from different states, and they're all doing something different. Some of them have been successful. We've heard a little bit about Kansas today, and how we're trying to adopt some of their models in our hog-free zone in Oklahoma. But Missouri in the news you may have seen Missouri just banned hog hunting on public hunting areas. They did that in order to take away that incentive for people to have those pigs. They also did that in order to increase their trapping efforts. When people go in, when wildlife department goes in and tries to trap animals, the last thing they need is somebody coming in and shooting a pig off of their trap, because now they've wasted all that effort and taxpayer dollars to put those traps out and catch those pigs, and somebody's scaring them off away from their bait sites. And so that was a regulation that was recent in the news. Kansas has never really allowed hog hunting, and they've got pigs in 5 of 105 counties. We've got it in 70 of 77 counties, right? So that's that's nor here nor there. Texas has done everything. They've thrown everything they can at feral pigs. They started with some of the commercial hunting facilities like we've got and all the buying station for those. About 5 years ago, they decided, well, we're going to outlaw introducing females and piglets to those commercial hunting facilities, and now you can only introduce a castrated male to a hunting facility. Texas also has really expansive network of these buying stations like we have in Oklahoma, but they're pigs that go through the buying station are destined for a terminal facility, which we, in Texas they term a terminal facility as a slaughter facility. And so they've done some things like that, but then at the same time, Texas, several counties in Texas have a bounty on pigs. Right now, there's, some through their hog out program, they apply for a government grant, they get this money for this hog out program, and they're using it to pay people to bring pigs in. All of those things, point to the fact that any time there is an incentive to shoot or trap or anything, a pig, there's also that incentive to have them, right? And so if there's any of those incentives for people to control them, there's an incentive to have them. There's one of the issues or one of the points I wanted to make, but also I want to talk about many states have experienced these new invasions via translocation. If I'd have brought a PowerPoint today, I'd have thrown a slide up there that showed you Tennessee. Years ago, they had a small population of pigs in the southeast corner of Tennessee. They decided, that population was growing year after year. They decided, well, we need to do something more than what we're doing. The wildlife department can't keep after them. So they introduced a statewide no limit, no restriction hog season for 3 years, and assessed it after those 3 years, and they found that there were now 50 populations of pigs statewide. And whether that was legal transportation or illegal translocation of those pigs, it occurred. And that's what Oklahoma and Texas, what we've already experienced. We're kind of too far behind the curve, as several guys have mentioned today, to do anything about that. So from a population standpoint, translocation may not harm our state at all. Obviously, with the exception of those feral swine facilities, but from a population standpoint, there's pigs in all those other counties. If we move more pigs to those counties, it's just contributing to that population. However, there are some real disease concerns, and that's my biggest concern when I think about translocation is the disease concerns. Noble Foundation is doing a lot of testing right now of some of these emerging zoonotic diseases. Say, for instance, Chagas disease, spread by the kissing bug. Another one is Zika virus, spread by a mosquito. Yes, maybe some of those pigs do respect fences, but I guarantee you a tick, a flea, a mosquito, and a kissing bug are not going to respect a fence. And so what we could get into, trying to think proactively here, what we could get into is just like we spread the pig population really rapidly through the glorification of hog hunting or whatever, legal transportation of these pigs across the state, and in many states, not just Oklahoma. We could, at the same time, spread this disease much more rapidly by moving pigs around. The last thing I wanted to talk about, and I know this is, we really wanted to talk about control techniques in this, so I'll spend a little bit of time talking about some of the issues I see with control techniques today. The biggest problem we're facing on Noble Foundation property with our cooperator base in the Southern Great Plains, and I spend a lot more time going to other states and educating producers too on hog control. The biggest problem we're seeing is that we are educating lots and lots of animals. It is getting harder and harder to trap pigs, and there's a reason behind that. Pigs are very, very smart animals. They're becoming more difficult to catch. A typical trap night in a conventional trap, say a box trap or a corral trap, is you've got a trap set there. Hopefully you've done your due diligence. You're not, and you're a responsible trapper, and you've actually trained those pigs to walk inside of that trap first before you set that trigger. But the fact is, a lot of people aren't doing that. They buy a trap. I've got a pig problem. I buy a trap. I take it out there, kick it off the truck, pour corn in it, and in that typical trap night, in that scenario, one pig walks in there and he catches it. But there were 15 more with it that didn't go inside the trap. And so now you've essentially caught the dumb ones, and you've educated all the ones that are going to continue going and do all the breeding from now on. So our population over time gets smarter and smarter and smarter, regardless of what a trapper will tell you. I can catch a pig in any trap. Well, yeah, I might be able to catch a pig in a coffee can, but I'm only going to do it one time. And so that's one of the real issues that we see in trapping. Some other technologies we've heard several times today, and I agree 100%. We're not going to shoot our way out of this problem. Hunting is the least effective technique for controlling pigs. You shoot at a sounder of pigs, it's just like catching one of those 15 in the box trap. You're going to hit one. If you're a really good shot, you may get 2 or 3. But then guess what? You've got 13 more, 12 more that you've sent to the neighbors to go do the damage now. A lot of people, and I poke fun at Texas AgriLife a lot because I went to A&M, but they tend to promote this integrated approach to hog control. So using lots of different techniques in unison. I argue with them all the time. I tell them you got to stop using that integrated approach, and it needs to be a strategic approach. Because an integrated approach is good. It's a sound concept, I guess, or it's a sound theory in a fact that it gets everybody involved. So if Joe Farmer down the road cannot afford a borebuster hog trap or a drop net or a helicopter, he can probably afford a box trap. So it at least gets him involved. So he goes to the farmer ranch, goes to Tractor Supply, buys a hog trap, sets it out there, and does something, right? But the problem is, are we causing more harm than good with that if we are continuing to educate the next generation of hogs? And another point is that if I do whatever the number is, if it's 70%, I really think that's high. I mean, I don't think we need to control 70% of the population on an annual basis in order to maintain status quo. I do know we got to control a lot of them, but 70 seems unrealistic. Okay, whether it's 30, whether it's 50, whether it's 70, a lot of these other techniques, shooting, box traps, aren't really doing it unless people are just really responsible and is trying to entice the entire sounder or group of pigs into that trap to capture at once. You know, for instance, if I trap 88% of the population on Noble Foundation property, and none of my neighbors are doing anything, we've collectively done nothing. And so these associations, what we're trying to promote now at Noble Foundation is, if you're going to buy a trap, you know, if you can afford to buy one of these suspended traps, a drop net, a bore buster, if you can afford to hire a helicopter pilot, do that, but do it as an association of landowners. Get a bunch of people together with common goals. Most of the time when somebody's raising corn right here, the neighbor's raising corn too. So get a group of people together and split the cost of that technology. Because honestly, if Jeff and I are neighbors and we both buy a bore buster, we can do just as good with one bore buster. We can just share it. Okay, and so you split the cost between multiple landowners, but then have longer lasting, more effective hog control because you're covering a larger land mass. I won't hit on any of this other stuff. I had some other stuff written down to talk to you about a toxicant that will probably be licensed or ready within the next couple years. Noble Foundation, we're still working on trapping techniques. We haven't given up on. We're done with board buster, but we haven't given up. We've got some modifications in the works right now because we know pigs are going to continue to learn from our technologies, and so we're going to continue doing that work. We're also doing some other research with GPS units, trying to learn how pigs are moving around and things like that. We've got 16 GPS collars, and we're finding that, I don't know, either our trapping is scaring them back to Texas or they're just used to going back to Texas because a quarter of them have swam the river. But with that, that's pretty much all I had to talk to you guys about today. If you got any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Representative Park for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, in your opinion, and we've heard over and over, that trapping is, kind of the best way to keep the population under control. With part of the federal dollars, and that, if I'm right, I mean it's somewhere around 400,000 or more a year that's coming into the state. How come we can't incentivize the trapping, even if we trap and kill them or whatever else in those traps, instead of wasting a lot of the dollars and get maximum use of those dollars by incentivizing trapping and still being able to limit the transport instead of making it harder on the guys that trap right now?
I am all for incentives. Now, I don't have a really good answer for that question, honestly. I am all for incentives to get people out on the landscape to do some trapping, but I do realize, based on on the experiences that the Wildlife Services in Texas, Texas Animal Health Commission has gone through, I do realize that imposing those incentives can also extend the realization that we are going to have hogs in the future. Because if you incentivize that, then people want to keep pigs around, because if I can make some money off of trapping them, I've got to keep a little, I've got to keep a little nest egg over there to keep producing more. We can't be naive and believe that people are going to trap themselves out of business, right? And so I don't know which is the lesser of two evils, but I am for incentives to get people on the landscape, and I try to promote it in a way that get your landowners together and buy you a nice cheap trap because you can all share it and you can have help. And you can get rid of these pigs. Yes, there's incentive. I personally like Texas's incentive a little bit better because I know they're going to a terminal facility that if they're killed right there on the spot, the disease potential can't go anywhere else.
Representative Casey for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to you on the GPS, what do they travel? What's an average, say,
It ranges highly based on habitat, and so I've seen some GPS work done in South Texas where pigs are traveling straight line distances of like 8 miles. In our, if I drew a line from one end of the home range to the other on our 16 pigs that we've got down at the Red River Farm right now, it's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. The extent of their home range. And it's really interesting how, we'll have some, especially at the pig conference in 2018, we'll be presenting a lot of this data. But it's really interesting how pigs are, for 13 hours straight, they stay in a tight area with they're a sounder with a bunch of other individuals, and at nighttime they head out to feed. They kind of break up a little bit, head out to feed, use the same travel corridors every night.
Representative Copeland for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You bring up the issue of where they go and they stay in this tight area for 13 hours. Why wouldn't that be the logical place that if you're going to shoot them, you follow them back to the hideout and you shoot them at the hideout? I mean, isn't that kind of like birds root? They do their damage at night and then they go back. I mean, is there any study? Is that feasible?
There is an approved method. That's another method, the Judas hog rule. And so you can put a GPS collar on it, and most often you put it on a female individual because they join a sounder. Okay, whereas the boars are solitary, they roam around. So that is an approved method. You can put a collar on a female animal, track her with a little radio antenna, go to her sounder and shoot all the ones with her, and then let her find another sounder and do the same thing. The point to that is it's still hunting. And so if you go out there and you aspire to shoot every one of them, you're going to shoot one and they're going to scatter. And so you may have to wait another day, then you can go in there and shoot another one. And that's a lot of effort to impose on a landowner where trapping would be much more efficient. Bigger gun.
Yeah, you're straight. Call in arm.
Any other questions? Seeing no questions, I think we'll move on. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next presenter is Matt Napper. Matt and Cheryl Napper own the Shiloh Hunting Preserve down around Colgate, Oklahoma. And even though Matt's going to be the one speaking, Cheryl's the brains of the outfit, okay? And also, she makes killer jelly. And by the way, I'm out. And you know where my veterinary hospital is, okay?
You can list that on your head.
Hog jelly?
Matt, come on in.
Hog jelly?
Thank you very much, Representative Reniger and Wallace, for putting on this interim study. Some of you I know, some of you I've seen for the first time, but it seems like in the last 18 months, you mentioned a feral hog. You have quite a gathering. My name is Matt Napper. I own and operate Shiloh Ranch, my wife and I. We have been in business for about 17 years in the state of Oklahoma. I have hunted, trapped hogs, hawk-dogged hogs. I've been around hogs, real life scenarios. I may not be a part of the Noble Foundation or the OSU. I'm sorry. I went to A&M also. But anyway, I have found out that hogs are a very intelligent animal, and that in all methods that we use, we have to employ to get rid of feral hogs. We are for safe food. We are for safe environment. They are very destructive. We understand that. But there's absolutely no question that the most effective means of controlling hogs in just about every scenario is trapping. And we have proven that. There's just some parts of the state that just one size doesn't fit all. There's some parts of the state of Oklahoma, as I'm sure this gentleman can attest, you can fly over all day long and there's such a canopy of forest that you're never going to flush the hogs out. So the most effective means is trapping. Now, trapping hogs has incentives in the state of Oklahoma right now. People do trap them to sell them to kill facilities, to sell to sporting facilities. There's money. That's the way you can afford these high-dollar traps. There has to be an incentive to buy one. Yeah, you're going to sell a few because of cooperative efforts, but if people have to pay back that $6,000 that they have to put in a trap, the best bounty you can have on one is a guy next door to me. He's got hogs on his ranch. He traps those hogs sells them to me. I bought one yesterday off a guy that literally was across the fence, trapped it, and my hunter killed it that afternoon. So that hog is gone. And by the way, the OFSC, which I'm the president of, is for trapping and removing feral hogs, and we will do it free of charge. And we are growing our organization. So if you just get on the OFSC website, that's Oklahoma Feral Swine Control Association, and get on there and say, hey, I've got hog problems, there's people in your area that will come out and take care of those hogs for you. And right now, working with the Ag Department, they've been very cooperative with us. Dr. Roach, Dr. Hall, Secretary Reese, we have sat down and put plans into action. There's legitimate people in everything, folks, no matter what you do, but you're going to have things that's not working. Not everything's 100% foolproof. In the year 2015, 10 participating Oklahoma Feral Swine Control Association organizations that trapped and killed hogs in the year 2015, we killed over 30,000 hogs. And we counted up all the numbers, just a little over 30,000. We brought in 9,860 people from outside of the state of Oklahoma that came to our ranches to kill these hogs. You don't have to go very far to get them. People think that we're the reason hogs is there. I've got a picture on my phone. My neighbor was burying a mule about 5 years ago. His backhoe hit something. They took the skull out, took it to OSU, or was it OU, and had it studied, and it was a hog, and they estimated it to be between 5,000 and 10,000 years old. I don't know if it come across on the Bering Strait or how it got here, but it was a feral hog. They naturally multiply, they move, they extend to range just like armadillos, fire ants. I'm not saying that we are the answer, but I'm telling you, we kill, as an association, we kill more hogs in the state of Oklahoma per year than all the other entities combined. That's a fact. We do it for free. We generate revenue for the state of Oklahoma. It was about $7.2 million that was brought into the state of Oklahoma through our hunting properties. So I think there needs to be, and there is some transportation issues, and you're going to have outlaws that do it crooked. But the people that are in compliant with the Ag Department, we get our licenses, we have our fences inspected, and listen, nobody knows more about what it takes to hold a feral hog than what I do. I'm not going to pay a trapper $100 to turn a wild hog loose on my property to be killed if I think it's going to get out. It just doesn't make sense. And I know there's some here that argue, but they don't know what they're talking about. We have done it for 17 years. It's effective. We capture the hogs that this stays on this side of the fence that nobody wants. It's a perfect business model because we're taking something that's already here, an invasive species, trapping it, putting in a facility, bringing people in to pay money to kill that hog. And effectively, it leaves our premises in a cooler, and it's dead. And so we want to keep on trapping hogs. Somebody said, what if you trap them all out? Well, that's a big what if, but if they were all trapped out, I'm not going to do something illegal and try to break the law to bring more hogs in. It's crazy. I raise cattle, I've got goats, I've got sheep, we've got other livestock. And we've got whitetail on our property, we've got turkey, we've got all kind of other critters on our ranch. And so we just felt like we're doing something in our community because the money that people come in from out of state, like I said, 9,800, and that's a low estimate because not everybody cooperated in the trying to give their numbers on how many hogs they kill. But we know conservatively we killed in 2015 over 30,000 hogs. And so we're going to keep doing that under the compliance of the Ag Department. Our hunters are paying a $25 hunt fee to the state of Oklahoma. The transporters are paying a $25 fee to the state of Oklahoma. And that money is going back into the economy in addition to what our hunters is bringing here. Anybody have a question on anything?
Representative Wallace for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is the price for your licensed facility annually? Is that free or not?
No, it's $200. and we have it annually inspected.
Follow up.
Do you happen to know how many licensed transporters / trappers we have in the state?
There's approximately 1,000, I believe is correct, Dr. Rhodes. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing no questions, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Representative Renninger.
My closing remarks are this. I mean, everything that was spoken today is what I want brought out. And I appreciate each one of the participants. I am concerned about hog diseases. I visited with Dr. Grant Rezebek, who's a pathologist at the Oklahoma Animal Disease Diagnostic Lab yesterday, and he said that they still have not isolated any viruses from pseudorabies in the state of Oklahoma thus far in livestock. They have in some dogs. But to me, the two main diseases that I'm concerned about in feral hogs is brucellosis and leptospirosis. Both of those are enzootic, which means they are transmitted to humans. And I've got a colleague of mine, a veterinarian, Dr. Tim Sinar from Muskogee, and he has brucellosis. He's had brucellosis for 38 years. And every 28 days for 38 years, he's developed a fever, chills, and headaches that last about 36 hours every month of his life. And so these diseases are real, and they are something we need to pay attention to. I also want to tell you that I visited the Shiloh Ranch, and Matt and Cheryl were nice enough to give me and my grandson a tour of the ranch, and we drove around the entire perimeter fence. And like I told you before, I raised hogs in high school. I never had any fences that ever approached his fences. And with that, I'll let Representative Wallace complete the study.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Also, I would like to, before we complete this, see if there's any other comment. I know that Farm Bureau showed up. They were not on the agenda, and see if anyone else has anything to say to add to the study at this point.
Comments from the audience?
Sure.
I'm Leanna McNally from the Oklahoma Farm Bureau. I'm the Director of National Affairs. Obviously, the Oklahoma Farm Bureau and our membership has big concerns about the feral hog population in Oklahoma. We just left our resolutions process this week, where our public policy department communicates with the membership about their concerns. They expressed, again, continued concerns about the feral swine population in Oklahoma and a complete eradication of that species to be a priority issue. So we're looking at that right now. Also, I heard several practical examples. There was an individual member who spoke up in our resolutions process that she was a member in Washington County, but the particular member she was speaking of, I think, was a member in Osage County, but could not complete his corn crop or corn harvest because of feral hog problems. Had a complete loss on that particular crop. So like Mr. Gaskamp said, it's continuing to be a problem. That $1.5 billion in damage is an older number. It's as the price of commodities change, it's definitely an increased number of damage, especially in Oklahoma. And Farm Bureau and their membership is committed to the complete eradication of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir. State your name, please. And
thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Keith Hall. I live down in Ryan, Oklahoma, the southern part of the state, about 2 hours south of here. I know you don't know who I am. I'm certainly not an eloquent speaker, but I trap hogs. I sell to facilities such as Mr. Knapp. The reason I'm here today is basically to learn. I've visited with Dr. Roach on the telephone. I've recently got my new facility handling license, my transportation license. So I've been trapping hogs, hunting hogs for some 15, 20 years. A real concern I have with the new implementation of the new laws is I've talked to several fellow trappers in our area that have really got questions on their minds as to why the implementation of these new laws, and really is it worth the trouble to go through for no more than they get out of the pigs. Bottom line is there has to be an incentive for us to trap hogs. Bottom line is there has to be a market for it. And by putting a moratorium on new licensed hunting facilities, by creating a difficult, maybe not difficult is the wrong word, by creating a what's the proper definition? The way we're having to fill out and register and all those kind of things, I'm willing to do it because I'm making money at what I'm doing. But many local trappers are deciding, okay, if I get caught, I'll quit doing it. If otherwise, I'm just not willing to do that. So I guess the reason I wanted to be here today is to learn why we're doing what we're doing, and if we're truly for the eradication of feral hogs, I think the best thing that we could consider was creating a sustainable, consistent market for those things, because there's enough of us old country boys that if we can make $1 out of it, we'll be trapping them. Like the man from the wildlife department, you can make a difference trapping hogs. I mean, I've been fairly successful through the years doing it, and there's techniques out there, proper ways to do it and not do it, and you can reduce numbers significantly by trapping, but it costs money, and you got to be able to let me make money out of it. And the bottom line is, please don't institute laws that would prohibit us from being able to have commerce with licensed facilities. I think we need more licensed facilities, honestly, to be able to create the incentive, a greater incentive for us to sell more hogs. And really the greatest thing I think that could happen would be if there was some way to have a meat production facility such as they have in Texas, in Oklahoma. If there was a processing plant that could actually sell the products worldwide like they do in the Fort Worth or the San Antonio facility, would be fabulous to be able to sell to. So that's my 2 cents worth, and if you've got any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you. Representative Copeland for a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just how much does the new regulations or requirements cost you in your business?
Well, the facility license cost me $200, and it costs $25 to get a transport license. But that's kind of a one-time deal. The complaint I'm getting from many of my friends, fellow trappers, is the aggravation of if they don't have a smartphone, and some of us country boys don't have smartphones, but filling out the permit process to satisfy the regulations. And honestly, we don't want to be breaking the law, but they are really frustrated that now they have to do this. And I understand that the desire to track it, and to me it's not unreasonable, but I'm just sharing with you what people are telling me. I'm willing to do it because I'm making money at it. But just a guy that's got a couple of traps out and he runs them, and now he's going to have to, for every trap that I have a pig in, I have to dial in a permit for that. I got 12 active traps right now, and if I have a trap, every one of them got pigs in them, or 8 of them's got pigs in them, I've got to get a separate permit for every one of them every morning. And while I'm willing to do that, I have some friends that are finding that, well, why are they trying to kill the incentive for us to trap hogs? And that's the way that the majority of my friends is taking this new legislation. You're trying to put us out of business. You're trying to keep us from trapping, and that's the environment that that I'm receiving. I've also become a buying station, so I'm buying some pigs from these people, and they are frustrated because of this.
For a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So actually, it's not the cost that's the issue. It's the
I mean, there's always people going to complain about the cost, but yes, sir.
quote unquote hassle of the process.
Yeah, it's just just the overall change in the whole venue. They're frustrated about it.
Representative Park for a question.
To kind of follow up, I think, now, is it correct? I mean, if you had just separate traps, if you had hogs in one trap, before that you move those hogs, you have to put in from your smartphone or whatever else back to have a permit showing that you're fixing to transport, those from that to your handling facility before that you ever even load them. Is that correct? I mean, on a daily basis, whether, from each trap.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Follow up.
And that's the argument from the trapper standpoint. And that's what we keep hearing, that trapping is the most reductive way to reduce our pig population. Yes. And that, in essence, is why that I think some of us in here are not understanding at all why more and more regulations and more laws are coming down through the Department of Agriculture instead of trying to make sure that we get to the root of the problem instead of trying to serve a self-serving interest.
Okay, Representative Vaughn for a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say probably what you guys need to do is to have an association like we talked about, where this group would meet us or come here to the Capitol and meet us and say, this is what would make our life easier. If maybe put in all those forms, maybe one form for the whole day, or what we do here is not try to make your life miserable. What we do here is to do what you need to be done. So I think it's hard to believe, but those are our constituents.
I certainly understand that, and I'm not trying to diminish the efforts that have been, because I agree. I mean, feral hogs put me out of the farming business. I used to raise watermelons, and they actually did away with my business. There's other causes also, but that was the main problem that I had back some 4 or 5 years ago. So I hate the boogers too. And I got into the trapping because I wanted the most efficient way to remove the things from my landscape. And in my little location there in Jefferson County, for about 3 years, I caught over 3,000 head of hogs myself. And for that little moment in time there, you had to look to find hog sign just in my little segment of the county. But I had to go get a job, and I had to, lessen my efforts and all that kind of stuff. And consequently, like you said, taking a bucket of water out of a lake, they all came right back in. And now we've got as many or more hogs than we've had, and so I'm back at it again. We have a severe problem not only with the commercial pig production, entities that are within the state, and we must be, respective of their concerns. And Dr. Roach is, he's doing his best job to try to create some sort of a tracking device to be able to be accountable for these. And I certainly respect that, and we probably need that to be able to know where we are. They go to a licensed handling facility. How many did you ship? And we want to make sure that those suckers don't get turned out. That's a sin in my book, to turn a critter out. Do they every once in a while escape? Obviously, yes. There's nothing 100% perfect, but I think we need to understand that this needs to be a cooperative effort of all of us. That we're not entities fighting against each other for prominence here. I'm making money at it. I have got to be able to make money at what I'm doing to continue doing it. But I'm not trying to create a bigger problem, but I don't want a bigger problem in trying to do what I'm doing too.
Representative Reniger for a question.
One real quick question. What do you all do whenever you catch these hogs if you don't have cell service in that area?
I don't have an answer, because I'm still at the infancy stage of getting all my licensing back to me, and I'm waiting on a letter regarding how to dial in for the permit. I haven't done that yet. I've been doing it illegally. If you want to take me in, take me in. But I've been trapping, I've been trapping like 8 or 9 days now this season, and I've caught nearly 200 head in those 9 days. But I have not yet dialed in to get my permit to transport them from my traps to my license handling facility. I do have my facility license now in hand, but I haven't yet dialed in to get the 24-hour permit yet. So,
okay, I got 3 more questions, and then we need to move on.
Okay.
Representative Copeland for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question is, my concern in this is the process. Is there a feeling that the process is too cumbersome or too hard and can't be made easy enough to comply with, or is it the fact that they just don't want to do it at all? I mean, somewhere in that.
I honestly believe it's because they don't want to do it all and they haven't had to do it before. The way I feel about the situation is, look, guys, this is the way we're going to have to do it, and if we want to keep doing it and be able to keep doing it, we better comply. So it's kind of like speeding. I may not want to drive 65, but I better do it. So in order to do it, it's just going to be a learning curve. We got to do it, and go on.
Okay,
But those are legitimate complaints that I've gotten, and we're just going to have to deal with it.
Representative Casey for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This probably goes back over there because I looked up the website, and there's really not anything on there other than the association's contact. And I guess my question is because we do get our share of calls as legislators, and the resources that are available. Like I say, the Wildlife Department has been great by coming out and helping and stuff, but I mean, it would be nice to be able to say, here's some resources. And it's probably available, but that might be something that would be good for us to have as legislators. Here's your options, versus, hey, can you get me a helicopter? Because that's not happening most likely. So maybe if we could ask for that, see the different options and who to call, who's in our area, et cetera.
That'd be good.
We're actually working on an interactive website right now. We're designing it to make it easier to get to.
I can get to it. There's just nothing there for me to see.
It'll be totally
advanced. One other thing that I'll be real quick. The Farm Bureau announced a while ago their intentions as far as what their resolution. I'm also a member of the Farm Bureau. I actually work for Farm Bureau. That's one of my 3 jobs. I'm a crop insurance adjuster. And I heard someone say a while ago, corn crops were being decimated and they were sure they didn't have insurance. They do have available to them multi-peril insurance from Farm Bureau. Thank you very much.
Advertising.
Do you have a question? Okay, I need to get
not only for Farm Bureau, from
get Dr. Roach in here real quick.
I was just going to offer a response if you'd like me to some of his concerns about it.
Sure.
I'll try to be real brief.
Is there a speed on those permits?
The biggest concern with transport of feral swine is that of people trapping and illegally translocating and releasing them. And there's multiple organizations here in Oklahoma and legislators that would rather see all those activities prohibited. And I think that would be a detriment to the feral swine control efforts throughout the state. If nobody has a place to take them, there's the feral swine population is going to grow out of control. So I feel like our rules was an attempt to create accountability for where these hogs were going so that we could prove whenever somebody's pulled off on the side of the road that we can say, oh yeah, he's got this permit and he's traveling from A to B, and then in my database at the office I can check the very next work week and check and see if those hogs arrived if we were concerned about it. So I believe that those efforts are a great compromise compared to some of the things that some other organizations would like to do in this state regarding transport. And although I recognize that it is somewhat of an inconvenience, that 24-hour permit system, it's available during regular work hours, 5 days a week by phone. We'll do it by phone. And if not, we'll do it online. And that can be done in a matter of minutes. We've really made our best effort to streamline that opportunity, so that they just have to put in how many hogs they have, where they come from, and where they're going to, and it's immediate approval. It doesn't sit on my desk and wait around. It's immediate approval, and they can go. But I respect that it creates an inconvenience. It's one more thing to have to do, but it is, from most of the transporters and definitely the facilities I've talked to, the people say that it's really pretty reasonable compared to where we could have gone with this. That's all I really have to say about it.
Okay. Look, I've got one gentleman that would like to speak yet, and then if we got some questions later, that'd be fine. Mr. Dietrich?
No, it is.
Okay, that's the only thing I
It is free of charge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Reniger and Representative Wallace. I'm very much encouraged by what I hear here today. One of the basic foundations of the American Farmers and Ranchers, of which I'm president, is private property rights, and that's pretty far-reaching. And we also protect, and our members want protection, or to be able to protect their own growing crops and their own property. To put all of that together, and meanwhile have respect for our game rangers that haven't been mentioned today, that put their lives on the line as they try to decipher the difference between a hog hunter and a deer hunter, and whether it's day or night and what time of day or year, that needs to be of concern. But I am most concerned by this exercise, all of these issues being brought to the table, and the cooperation that I sense here in all of us trying to find a solution. We're a general farm organization. I represent every commodity. I represent all kinds of people. And when we start talking together, we will find a workable solution. Not necessarily one that works, that everybody's in favor of, but I've always felt like the best legislation is when everybody doesn't get everything they want. So we certainly support your efforts, appreciate you doing this, and we stand ready to assist anything we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take two more questions. It'll be Representative Russell first and Representative, okay, Wallace, no. Representative Russo, real quick.
I'll try. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try. But this lends to something that happened last November at the Farm Bureau convention during the resolutions discussion. There's a movement, not from this legislature as much. We saw that, but we killed it. But there was a movement, and it was successful and went in the policy book last year. I wasn't at the resolutions conference this week, but we'll see what survived and makes it to the convention here soon. There was a movement to do away with all high fenced facilities, because the side that I argued against that, because I said that's part of the chain in controlling, in having incentive to go out and spend your day to trap, have a place to take them. But the thought process there was, no, these high fenced facilities are an incentive to raise more hogs. So would you agree with that, or would you disagree with that? I think I already know.
They're long enough.
They are not an incentive to raise more hogs, because, to be honest with you, I don't know how we could do that. To raise something, you got to be in control of it, and we are certainly not in control of feral hogs. So the only way I make money out of the feral hogs is to get it in his hands, and he gives me money back. I can't create a model for some sort of a breeding program for feral hogs unless I go to a commercial operation and buy a bunch of hogs and turn them loose, I suppose. But that's ridiculous, honestly.
And people don't pay money to shoot little bitty hogs either. You know what I mean?
We are out of time. Okay.
Well, I already knew the answer to that, and I argued against that thought process last year, and I appreciate everything I've heard here today. It's they're well-run facilities. We already knew that because we had people come here the last couple of years when we had legislation pending that we argued back and forth. So I'm so glad from what I've heard today. There's a way to control them, and it's people that are mostly professional, and we all got our outlaws. We agree on that. But the high fenced facilities are necessary for a place to get them to. And I talked to some of the guys that have slaughterhouses also, from the hunters that kill them, and then they go to the local slaughterhouses. So it's also quite a part of our economy. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would agree, but I would love to see some sort of an effort put forth to try to create some sort of a processing facility. You know, because like we said a while ago, we can't sell pigs under 60, 80 pounds. So we end up shooting them. I have to have a facility to dump my pigs in and cover them up with dirt. Whereas, you know, the helicopters shoot, they leave them laying everywhere dead. You know, that's not ecologically sound, I don't think. But anyway, we need a processing plant that we can get rid of a pretty good tasting commodity. And so if there's ever an effort put forth to creating a production facility, it would be fabulous, I think, in Oklahoma.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the interim study.